Top of the morning to you. This is Monday with Friday, wishing for you a grand week ahead. I want to ask you a trinity of questions. Who is your neighbor? What kinds of responsibilities do you think you have toward your neighbor? And what kinds of responsibilities to your wider community and wider world can you undertake only if you have a good relationship with your neighbor? Before I continue, please remember to like and share this video. It's the only way that it gets the attention of many other people and my ratings go up. Now, I don't live in Trinidad and Tobago anymore. And although the westernmost tip of the island of Trinidad lies 7 miles east of the Venezuelan coast, I am no fount of knowledge about things Venezuelan. What I do know is that there is ample disquiet surrounding the persistent suspicions that Nicolas Maduro not only lost last week's elections in Venezuela, but that he is in full flight theft of those elections. I had no trouble imagining that Maduro would have done exactly this, whether or not the American rapist, liar, fraudster, and electoral thief who set the quintessential model for Maduro to follow, said some kind of gibberish poppycock that somehow praises Maduro as a strong man, while at the same time demonizing racially the harrowed and harried Venezuelans escaping Maduro's hell and seeking asylum on America's southern border. I note that quite recently the government of Trinidad and Tobago, one of Venezuela's two nearest Caribbean community, CARICOM neighbors, entered into some kind of energy agreement with Maduro's government just before the elections. Venezuela sits atop perhaps the world's largest reserves of petroleum deposits, and it is hard to imagine that their economy was the most robust in all of Latin America not too long ago. Venezuela's other CARICOM neighbor is Guyana, with whom Venezuela has disputed over land possession, and in whose favor the International Court of Justice ruled in December 2023. The ICJ instructed Venezuela to abstain from any actions that threaten the status quo of Guyana's ownership of the disputed Essequibo region. I wonder what actions, if any, the member territories of the Caribbean community, CARICOM, of which Venezuela is not a member, but of which Trinidad and Tobago and Guyana are members, can encourage, impress, persuade, or even force Maduro to behave himself over there in Venezuela. Similarly, I have a concern about Cuba. Following Canada and Mexico on America's northern and southern borders, respectively, and Russia 55 miles across the Bering Straits from Alaska, America's nearest geographical international neighbor is Cuba. And yet the relationship between all of these neighbors is anything but neighborly. Caribbean nations, or more accurately, Caribbean leaders, who played the neighbor to Cuba automatically and unnecessarily became America's enemy. Ask Michael Manley about that. What would the world be like if, first of all, Russians, Venezuelans, North Koreans, Cubans, and even Americans found a way to secure the leader of their choice, and then those leaders led their nations to be intentional and international neighbors? We should note that no Republican leader since Bush 43 in his second election has ever gained the majority of Americans' vote, the popular vote. Bush, in his first term, was an unpopular leader by Supreme Court rather than by Supreme Count. That, by definition, is a theft. But my questions and musings may be foolish, for nowadays international neighbors seem to follow suit individual neighbors who mind their own business while their neighbors suffer rank injustice, or in the worst case scenario, join the bad behavior. That's the case with Russia, still targeting children's hospitals or places known to house the vulnerable, sick, and innocent with the help of North Korea and China. Vladimir Putin, whose fake strongman nomenclature, frequently repeated by the American rapist, fraudster, and election thief, remains dubious so long as Putin never tests that supposed strongman status by stepping out of Russia into any country that is a signatory to the International Court of Justice or chooses to vacation in Mar-a-Lago. Why don't you do that, Vladdy boy? One supposed reason the majority of Venezuelans place their vote against the name Edmundo Gonzalez might well be that they find him more a neighbor than Maduro. Experts have said that Maduro's claim of victory is a colossal statistical improbability. I would counsel Americans when their time comes for the vote 80-some days from now, as well as my friends in Trinidad and Tobago sometime soon, to think about whom you would want to be your neighbor. But more than that, which candidate has been or behaves like they would be a neighbor to you. And who is your neighbor? Not someone who lies each time they speak, not someone who grabs women by their crotches, not someone who defrauds university students or the national treasury, not someone whose government, when they last had a swing at it, depleted the treasury, placed incompetent and unqualified people in charge of key positions, including national security, not someone who mocks other abled persons, not someone who offers no ideas at all for liberty and justice for all, not someone who is frequently drunk on the job, not someone who is accountable to no one, not someone who abuses religion, power, or other people's money and public office and public trust for self-indulgence and self-aggrandizement. Jesus once described a neighbor as one not of your own race or your own religion, who would take their own valuable resources and apply it to you and your well-being when you are in a crisis. Vote for your neighbor, if there are any left. Vote for the person who will be neighbor to the most marginalized and vulnerable people you know. Vote for the people who will take power and not abuse it and apply it to their own selves for their own upliftment and aggrandizement, but for uplifting the marginalized and the weakest among us. Now, last week, I crossed the 4th anniversary of this program. I aired my pilot episode of Monday with Friday on August 3rd, 2020, in the heart of the COVID crisis. Thank you for staying with me these 4 years. Thank you for egging me on when I thought it was time to close my laptop and hang up my microphone and my boots the last time. I sometimes struggle to keep going, to find ideas, to remain relevant. But if the end of my labor is your joy, inspiration, and appreciation, then I have served my purpose and my God. I'm Michael Friday, and your week just got better. I'll see you again soon. Happy Monday, all the way to Friday.